Chapter 4, The Test. The angels are all individual persons, each having an intellect and a free will. Many believe that a free will is the greatest gift God gave to His person creatures. Actually, free will gives every person who has it an opportunity to go to hell. The one who has a free will invariably want more and more freedom, even to the point of desiring a freedom outside his own nature. This is a folly, but it seems to go with a free will. I think of the story of the planet that grew tired of going around and around its star. Finally driven by its uncontrolled desire to be liberated from the star, it broke orbit for ultimate freedom. It became lost in space, alone with nothing to grasp onto, hopelessly wandering in darkness. It perished in despair, longing for a return to the warmth, light, and security of its orbit. Freedom is good if it is the freedom that is compatible with one's nature. If it is not, it's a disaster. Real happiness is found in the obedience to God's laws, and not in the folly of our imagination. The law of the Lord is perfect, refreshing the soul. The decree of the Lord is trustworthy, giving wisdom to the simple. The precepts of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The command of the Lord is clear, enlightening the eye. The fear of the Lord is pure, enduring forever. The ordinances of the Lord are true, all of them just. They are more precious than gold, than a heap of purest gold, sweeter also than syrup, or honey from the comb. Psalms 19, 8-11. The angels are to be subjected to a loyalty test. All of the angels were created good, so it seems ridiculous at first thought to think that any of the angels might fail such a test. However, the test given to them was not quite as easy as we might think. Why should there be a test at all? The mystery of free will allows for evil. Heaven is for winners, conquerors, for those that overcome a trial, for those that obey God's commands. Basically, heaven is for those that obey God. To have a free will means to have the potential to turn oneself into a beast, or to turn oneself into a perfect God-like being. God gave His person creatures free will so that they may make of themselves what they want to make. The test is to be a choice between self and God. The angels are magnificent beings, and they perceive their own beauty and power. God is hidden from them, but there can be little doubt about their belief in God. Angels don't generate a species. They must know that they were created directly by God. God manifested Himself to the angels in the form far inferior to their own angelic grandeur. This was a manifestation of the Son, the second person of the Blessed Trinity, because He made the angels. He may have appeared as Jesus, or possibly something like the way we see Him in the Eucharist, a small round white wafer. Appearing as Jesus seems to be the best choice here. This manifestation probably lasted for a time and then was removed from the angels. At a certain time, the angels were to humble themselves and acknowledge their dependence on their Maker and obey His command for them. They all had significant knowledge and grace to pass the test, but many of them refused to renounce themselves, even for a short time, in favor of the inferior appearing manifestation of God. Some may have had memory lapses, and some may have let themselves think too much about themselves and having fun rather than think about obeying God. Some of them may have blocked God out of their intellect altogether. The angels that, because of their pride and disobedience, refused to humble themselves were cast into hell. They lost all of their beauty and most of their power. They were confined into a small, loathsome, dark place. The place was loathsome because the spirit hates to be entrapped in matter. These unfaithful angels are now devils and demons. The big ball explodes and the universe is born. The angels that humbly acknowledged God were rewarded with the everlasting happiness of heaven, where they are constantly in the presence of God. They are now forever separated from the angels of darkness. Their beauty is increased, and also their power. They can now follow the explosion to the end of time and see the unending wonders of God. Jesus gave us the lesson on this test. Those that exalt themselves shall be humbled, and those that humble themselves shall be exalted. Because all of the angels had a free will, we can think that it therefore was theoretically possible for all the angels to pass the test and go to heaven, and also that it was theoretically possible for all of them to fail the test and to go to hell. Neither one of these possibilities existed. First, the possibility that all the angels could have passed the test didn't exist because of the great numbers of angels created. The greater number of participants, the less the possibility of them all going in the same direction. This would be something like flipping a coin, weighted slightly in favor of heads, or good, and having it come up heads every time with a billion trillion tries. Along with this, there is the fact that the test was designed to prove the unfaithful angels as well as to prove the faithful ones. Somehow the very nature of free will has a downward tug which the grace of God overbalances to the good from the start. If the grace is neglected, the downward tug can be irresistible. It was mathematically and theoretically impossible for all the angels to pass the test. However, every angel that failed the test was 100% responsible for its own action. There is also the case of many smaller or minor follower angels that were influenced by higher angels. For instance, a seraphim or cherubim type angel may have intimidated some powers or domination types to be on their side during the test rather than the side of those silly, meek, humble, do-gooder type angels. Some angels must have felt pressure like the following. There were many, even among the Sanhedrin, who believed in him, but they refused to admit it because of the Pharisees, for fear they might be ejected from the synagogue. They preferred the praise of men to the glory of God. John 12:42-43. Then there is the case of the angel who, knowing that the end of the test will mean heaven or hell, decides not to participate. The angel does not want to go to hell and doesn't care about heaven because he's happy where he is. But God has a rule that says, "He who is not with me is against me." Matthew 12:30. There is no neutrality. Participation in the test is not optional. This is the idea mentioned in the parable of the silver pieces, Matthew 25:14-30. The servant buried his master's money, or grace, instead of putting it to work to earn more, because he was afraid of punishment, or hell. He must have thought that if he did not play the game, then he could not lose. The master dealt with him like this: throw this worthless servant into the darkness outside, where he can wail and grind his teeth. The possibility of all the angels failing the test is much easier to argue against. If all the angels had passed the test and had gone to heaven, God would have been a winner, even though it could have been thought that the test was not really much of a test. It was a good and just test, and the fact that many of the angels failed does not make God a loser at all. God allows evil to exist because he is so great and powerful that he is able to bring a greater good out of it. The good being the manifestation of his infinite mercy, or the manifestation of his infinite justice. In the case of the angels that failed the test, God is glorified in the manifestation of his infinite justice in condemning them to hell forever. God gives gifts, and some angels receive more infused knowledge and grace than others. In giving more gifts to some angels, God is increasing the odds in his favor that all of them won't fail. This is done without interfering with their free will. God is not a loser. If all the angels failed the test, it could be said that God erred or lost in something he tried to do. I say again, God doesn't lose, and it is impossible that all the angels could fail the test. A fallen angel can complain about this, saying, the test was not fair. Some of those angels in heaven had a much better chance than I had. Some angels had 10 times more knowledge and grace than I had. It just wasn't fair. Then God could say, I have done you no injustice. My grace was sufficient for you. Have I not the right to do what I want with what is mine? Or are you envious because I am generous? Many are called, but few are chosen. Matthew 20:13-16. It seems that all the angels were tested simultaneously. There was no thought of repentance. All decisions were final. It has been suggested that the pride of the angels in hell is so fixed that if offered a chance to do it all over again, they would refuse. They hate so much that there is no room for a repentant thought. The question has been asked by some, if God knows the future, then he knows who is going to heaven and who is going to hell. Why do we go through all this living? Why doesn't God just put the good guys in heaven and the bad guys in hell? This question goes along with the question, why doesn't God stop evil things from happening? Heaven, as we said, is a reward for winning a victory. Hell is for evildoers. Jesus could have told us that he would die for us, but not really go through with it. That is not proof. That is not perfection. The good deed must be done, and the evil deed must be done as proof against the evildoer. God said to Cain, what have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the soil. Proof. Jesus said, if any place will not receive you or hear you, shake its dust from your feet in testimony against them as you leave. Mark 6:11. The testimony to be used on Judgment Day as a proof against the evildoers. The fact that God knows who will be saved and who will not be saved does not influence our free will. We are perfectly free to decide which way we will go. The mystery of free will allows that we are 100% responsible for our evil acts. Our good acts we cannot take so much credit for. As St. Paul said, God works in us if we allow him to both will good and accomplish good. Jesus said, without me, you can do nothing. This may very well be the root evil in all evil acts, forcing, as it were, God to cooperate in an evil act by giving existence to it in accordance with the sinner's will.